is 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey, my space friends, welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast, your go-to space game show weekly, where we bring in a new person every week with a nice little new opinion on things and a good take. This week we've got a different take. Usually we're taking Star Citizen content creators, but we decided to dip into Escape From Tarkov this week. Would you say, is that how you know yourself, or are you more variety?
Yeah, okay, so I started off doing Tarkov, and that's kind of how I splashed onto the scene. So from a gaming perspective, people would know me from that for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But you've been doing kind of like video, what do they call it? Like video essay things about.
Sure, yeah. I'm moving more into a version of investigative journalism for gaming and tech adjacent is kind of the category I'm going for. But
that's fun.
So it is a transition. So I went from doing like only Tarkov content, full, play with me, come, watch me play and streaming.
Right.
And I did a lot of shorts and things like that. And I've moved away from strictly gaming content to now more bigger picture investigative journalism type things.
Expanding. That's cool.
Yeah. But I still like Tarkov is a game that I will always play, and it just scratches an itch, and it's just my kind of game, and I will never like stop talking about it and being interested in it basically. Yeah. So it's like I caught the bug.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't recognize voice, this is YouTuber g0at. You just go by g0at, or is there, what is it usually?
Yeah. g0at's fine. The only reason I even went with the g0at moth is because people like g0at's taken everywhere. And so even with the 0, so I added moth because my name is Tim. So Tim Mothy. So the moth is part of that. So I had a g0at moth. So yeah, g0at Tim, g0at moth, wiggle guy, whatever, I'll
add on moth here just to make it clear.
No, yeah, it's fine either way.
This is g0at moth, guys, not g0at. All right. We're going to get that back though. Start a petition. Find out who has that.
And a lot of people think it has to do with greatest of all time, like that term, whatever. It has to do with the animal g0at. And I had a philosophy channel back in the day, and there are sheep and goats, and my channel was more like a g0at. It was anyway. But
wait, so you have a YouTube history before the gaming stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was on YouTube in 2005, 2006 before it was acquired by Google, and I was one of the first batches of people who beta tested like the AdSense program. And I did like philosophy content. I mean, it's nothing like what I do now. And YouTube was a completely different space then. And you couldn't really make a living on it. You could make money, like fun money, but it wasn't like a job. But so I was on the website for a while, and I've had several other channels, and I've done behind the scenes like commercial video work for YouTube channels. So I've been kind of in the YouTube space for a while. Okay. So, but yeah,
YouTube grandpa over here. That explains that explains the videos though, man. You're not only is the content very good, but the way you edit it is very pleasing. And you look at a channel that's just covering games, and you see that, and it stands out. So, ups on that.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you.
Yeah, explains it with the veteran status. So you started out doing like philosophy stuff, and you had other channels throughout all this time. I guess, when did you get into covering games primarily?
Yeah, I created a gaming kind of centric channel because it's just fun. I think a lot of people want to share clips with people. I actually got into streaming initially because it was a VOD service for me. So if back in the day when they first did like the Amazon Prime with Twitch, it was a big bonus to actually like catalog your footage on their servers, right? So let's say you're playing Tarkov and something fun happens, and you're like, man, I don't want to like go through this file on my hard drive and like edit it and pull it out and send it to my friends. So I would stream it just like 24/7, stream it to Twitch. I had no viewers, was not trying to entertain anybody, was literally using it as like a VOD service. And then every once in a while, you'd run into somebody in game and you'd have an exchange, and it was interesting. and you would put like TTV in your name or something, and they would find you and they come into chat, and then you would talk.
Yeah.
And I would have these clips, right? And so I started editing the clips and sharing them, and then, you know, they started getting a lot of views, and then my channel has just evolved, and you're kind of seeing the early stage of this channel. I had a really big video blow up in March that got a little over 3 million views. That was a big deal in the Tarkov community, and that video kind of gave me like the impetus. Hey, I should spend more time on this, and let's give this a go. So I'm spending more time on the channel now. So I'm super excited, you know, about continuing to make content.
Just takes a 3 million view video to think, oh yeah, maybe this will work. But that's no, that's a really cool natural progression into it. You know, a lot of times people will just be like, oh, I really like this game. I've got good opinions. Let me make a really well produced video straight out the bat and put all my effort into it. And you just kind of, the whole Twitch for recording the game, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, and I don't even stream on Twitch today. Like if I stream, I'll do it on YouTube or something. But you know, I love Twitch. I have nothing against it. It's just it is a time consuming thing. You kind of have to pick left or right which way you're going to go. If you're thinking about going into content creation, and I'm sure you'll have the same opinion, like, you kind of need to pick which side of the angle are you going to spend the majority of your time. And I figured out pretty quickly that I'm probably better just creating content and streaming, you know, to support it and have fun with streaming and engage with your community, which, you know, is great with chat and everything. But I'm not going to be ever be primarily a streamer, you know? Right. And so I kind of made that decision early on. But I was getting frustrated with Tarkov in the game with the cheating situation, and I made a video investigating how bad the cheating situation was. And I knew it was super risky. And I went into this going, well, if it doesn't work out and the community like hates this and I get banned from the game, and if it all goes south, oh well, like it's not the end of the world. And it ended up doing a complete opposite of that. It's got like a 99% like ratio, which I thought it was going to be like a 50-50.
Holy crap.
And yeah, it's incredible. Like people, the amount of comments too. So if you look at the number of views for the amount of comments, it's like 2 to 3 times like what you would expect in a normal viral video, like the number of like engagement. And people are writing like 3 paragraphs. Like, it's not like, oh, great video. It's like, dude, people, oh, I had this experience and you did this and I've been thinking this for a long time. And if you haven't seen the video, it's essentially I downloaded cheats and started a new account and made some rules. I wasn't going to kill anybody in the game. I wasn't going to play with other players, and I was going to reset my account afterwards. And I was just going to use the ESP to bait people into telling me whether they were cheating. Yeah. And initially, the first few days, I didn't really catch anybody, and I thought, whatever. And then I realized that if I wiggled through a wall and let other cheaters know that I was able to see them by zeroing in on them and wiggling, I would let them know that, hey, I'm cheating and I know where you're at. And then they would show their hand, either wiggling back or they would do something that would be really obvious. And then I realized there was a lot more cheaters than I thought. Right. I always suspected that there were a good amount, but there was a lot more than I thought. And then so I published that, and the rest is history, you know.
And then you followed up incredibly fast. I think that was really good also, just kind of following up and communicating more about it. I watched the video that you did, the kind of react to the reaction videos, which I thought was also a really great take at that kind of content. And all around, man, I mean, that's just the sign of good stuff, right? When that many people get that passionate about it in the comments, that's the kind of stuff you want to see. People will make fun about novels and YouTube comments, but like, that is the sign of good content. It has gotten people thinking, and even if 90% of those paragraphs of stuff is nonsense, you get some really, really good takes down there. Yeah.
I do read all the comments. You hear a lot of people who make content and they go, I don't read any of the comments, and I don't read it. I don't know if they're just like, I don't know about you. I read all of them. I may skim if it's, you know, like, okay, this guy's mad about this. Okay, whatever, you know. But I will read them all. And I think it's good to like kind of know where you're at, what people are thinking, what people are appreciating, what they're not. I do often find that I'll realize, you know what, I didn't make this point very clear. Okay, so for example, the Star Citizen video that I made, my conclusion was pretty like, hey, pre-release games, you should probably, my whole conclusion was it's really cool what you can do when you fund projects that are trying to do things that are, new and innovative.
Mhm.
And this is an important part of like gaming, history and, development. We need to like try things, right? And you just need to know before you try a pre-release game, and you back a game before it's out, probably just make sure you're satisfied with where it's at right now. Make sure you're able to get your monies back, right now. And that was kind of my conclusion. But if you look at the comments, that is not what people thought my conclusion was. And I'm like, well, like maybe I kind of baited them in with the title. Maybe in the beginning I set it up, and they stopped watching because they thought I had, they had their mind up in what I was going to say. And so, you learn things, right?
Yeah.
when you go through the comments.
Oh yeah. And I'll say this, there is a way certain Star Citizen folks view videos about Star Citizen that aren't made from the community. I'm sure, there's some level of that in like Escape From Tarkov community. I'm betting not only the setup, but also probably the title, like you said. The Starfield versus Star Citizen thing is something it gets people triggered. And I know that well. I'm going to do it in a couple weeks, but I think that probably, that probably grated on people. Tell me more about Escape From Tarkov, though. Like, for those who don't know anything about it, give us, like, I guess the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so I would say Escape From Tarkov defined a new genre of gaming called the loot extraction shooter. And the premise is it's a first-person shooter game. You spawn into this large map with a bunch of other players, and there's AI and there's bots and objectives and quests and things you have to try to do. But the whole premise is everything you have on you, including the guns and ammo and everything, can all go away. So when you die, you lose it all. It all drops to the ground. And if another player wants to take it out, they can take it out and leave. And you don't get to leave anything that you find. You don't really win until you actually make it to an extraction. So what's different about this kind of style of game is you can have these moments where you're walking around for 5 or 10 minutes and you don't hear anybody. And you walk into a building and you start looting and you look through a jacket and you look through a box and then you hear footsteps above you. Like, oh no. And you can talk to this guy. You can fight with the guy. You don't know if there's 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, 5 guys. There could be a 5-man, in this building with you. And maybe when you walked in, they thought your footsteps were one of their teammates and they're confused and they don't even know you're there. Or maybe they all heard you and they're all just holding angles, and the game can get really intense, really, really, really quick. And what makes it really dramatic is, you have these tasks, right? Like, and a task could be find this item and get out of the raid. A raid is like a match.
Yeah.
Or you could have a task that says, come into this building and look for this boss and kill this boss and take his backpack or something. We need that backpack. And maybe you've been trying to do this quest for like 2 months. And you finally find this rare item and you're about to finish this quest line. And then you run into like a team and you're like, no, like maybe I can take him. Maybe I'll beat him. But should I? And like, so you're kind of weighing like, should I run away? Should I fight these guys? Should I just hide? Should I close the door and just like hide in a closet, And so the game is really, it's really cutthroat because when you lose really hard. And when you win really hard. So the skill gap really, like, people who are really good at Tarkov, like, it's fun watching them because they make the game look so easy. And then you go to play it yourself and you realize this game is hard. This game is so hard.
I know that feeling.
And so, and so I think Tarkov got really popular to watch as a streaming game because of the pacing of it, because of like, there's like an intermission almost between raids because you have to like re-gear up. And the game is like super deep. Like for example, like when you bring in a gun, there's like 12 different ammo types for like 5.45 AK caliber. And then you can get an AK caliber in the 7.62, which has 7 or 8 different calibers. And if you put the wrong bullets in the magazine, it'll let you put the magazine in the gun. And then you get into a raid and you go 5-10 minutes and you're walking around and then you finally you see this guy and he's looking the wrong way and you line up the shot and you're about to take the head, gun jam.
Oy.
You have to actually clear the jam. So you have to like identify what kind of jam it is, clear the jam. And if you want to load the right ammo in, you have to manually unload the magazine one bullet at a time, and then find the right ammo and then drop it in there and manually load it one bullet at a time. And you can't do that in a gunfight, you know, like.
Yeah, that's that kind of combat Legos I've heard of from that game. Like the whole load the bullets in and like take care of everything very strategically. That's intense, man. How long is like one raid?
So it depends on the map. So it could be as short as 30 seconds if you get killed really, really, really quickly. And it can be as long as like 45, 50 minutes.
Okay. And
so yeah.
Well, and you were saying that like you might have a raid that you're in what was it? You said like a task that you needed to do for weeks. So it's like everybody is kind of going at their own progression. You get into a raid and you have something that you need to do that might be different from what other people are doing.
Yeah. So there are, a handful of maps, and some of the maps are really big, like really big. And some of the maps are really small. So for example, there's this map called Factory, and it's kind of like a deathmatch map. There's only a max 6 players can join the server at a time. Now there's other things, like there's this other branch of players called scavs, which you can spawn in and you kind of are like an annoyance to everyone, and you can try to, loot as you get out. But in general, there's only about 6 players that can join a factory map. So very, very small. And they're talking about expanding some of the bigger maps to being over 60 players in like the next, wipe or whatever. But who knows if that'll happen. But, so there can be a lot of players in an area where everybody, like there's this map that's called Interchange. It is a mall map. It's this like post-apocalyptic map, and sometimes you'll go to a certain point early on in the wipe when everyone's doing a task. And there will be like 20 people at this objective, bodies everywhere. Like you hear gunfire, nades going off. Or you can log in the next day and run that same task and go to that point where everyone else might be, and no one's there. And you don't even see anybody. You still have the AI to deal with, and you have to kill them, and there's things like that. But it's, again, everyone is doing their own thing typically. So what's fun about Tarkov is when the wipe comes, everyone loses all their skills. They lose all their inventory. So they don't have all the nice ammo. They don't have the nice body armor. They don't have anything unlocked. So like in Star Citizen, you have like ships that you can unlock and things like that. In Tarkov, you unlock like traders, which allow you to buy like better stuff.
Okay.
And so you do tasks to unlock progression within the trader. So, you will be running a task and you'll run into somebody and you'll try to make friends with them. And it's all just, code. It's like, all right, man, you want to team up? And they're like, okay. And you don't know if they're going to shoot you, and you hope that they don't. And like, you're kind of thinking like, well, he's looking the wrong way right now. Maybe I'll shoot him. And there's this whole like drama. It's kind of like DayZ,
Yeah.
So, I mean, the game is just super dynamic. You can play it any way you want. You can just be a PvP guy who goes in and just fully autos everything, or you can be a sniper that sits back and, is trying to get headshots at 200 meters away and all that. So, yeah.
I can hear the appeal to that, that would also cross over with Star Citizen for people. They both kind of have that strategize and pay for your mistakes mindset, that simulation kind of gameplay. It sounds good. I might have to try that someday if I ever get back to shooting people in video games, but I have just not been doing FPS much lately. I was huge on Halo for a long time, and then it's kind of just not gone anywhere for the last couple of years.
Yeah, Halo Infinite was not the best of their recent releases, I would say. Yeah. Unfortunately. If you ever do want to play, I played Star Citizen with a Twitch streamer, Devin Aubrey, who I told my chat, hey, connect me with somebody who wants to play some Star Citizen. And we went around and we had a blast. And she mentioned she wanted to check out Tarkov. If you ever did want to play, I'm always down. And
for sure.
And we'll have a blast. There's no, I mean, it's one of those kind of games. It's like Star Citizen where you don't even have to try to do anything. You can just run around and have some fun,
I'm sure people would love to see me spaz out in that game. So I think, yeah, we'll have to give it a try at some point.
Yeah, your chat is gonna love it, I bet.
All right, well, let's talk about space games. So we've got 2 space games coming, and well, okay, let me rephrase that. There are 2 space games of interest during this podcast. We got Star Citizen, which we're going to spend most of our time talking about, but also Starfield coming out soon. And obviously, we've been talking about Tarkov a lot and didn't really get into any sort of RPG stuff. Where does a game like Starfield sit on your scale in terms of like the top of the scale being a game that you absolutely would not miss, the bottom being, something you don't care about?
Man, this game flew on my radar a couple years ago. I think it was 2022. They did a big gameplay release, and I think they had one before that as well. And Todd has kind of mentioned this game that he's been thinking about and working on for a long time, and I don't know the dates. And I was like, man, I want to see Bethesda do something in space. And to be honest, when I saw the 2022 or whatever the initial big gameplay trailer was, I was kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't know what this is going to be, how in depth is this going to be? And personally, I'm not a big single player gamer. Like, I'm trying to think of the last big single player game that I was excited for and played, and I can't really think of one in the last probably 5 years that I've been really excited about. And there's been a lot of great single player games. I just, I will play some. I will run through the campaign, and but it's not. It isn't a big part of my repertoire as a gamer. I like dealing with other human beings. So I was kind of surprised when I got really interested in Starfield. And just by the by, I've been following Star Citizen for a long time. Like, I've been wanting to kind of jump in and play, and I've been kind of waiting for the right time. And so I've kind of been, I have that itch. I want to play some kind of space game. And Starfield is super intriguing to me, and I'm gambling. I hope it's going to come out and be good. I can almost guarantee you it's going to be fun and interesting and all that. I hope it's not too buggy,
there's no way it's not. It's Bethesda. I mean, I know that's like the meme is that they release buggy releases and yada yada yada, but they release fun games. I mean, every game I've played from them has been an absolute blast to play. I didn't play Fallout 76, but they're always good. They might be a little glitchy.
Yeah, and they have such a good track record. I mean, the Fallout 76 thing is so interesting because everybody, you look at my comments in my video, or anytime that this gets brought up, that gets thrown around like it's like the status quo for Bethesda, or that, and again, like if you didn't want to pre-order it and you played it at launch, you could have just like returned it immediately, or you could have just like waited like a day, and then you would have seen the reviews. The reviews were not good, and you just move on with life, and it's not like a crime, Also, what's interesting is I've heard they've cleaned it up really, really well. But I mean, the damage is done. And I've never been a big Fallout guy, but I can respect those games. I mean, there's a reason it's they've been such a a powerhouse in the gaming world and that genre. So
they're one of the go-to, at least Western RPG makers now. You see companies like BioWare kind of fall into the wayside with their stuff, and Bethesda looks more and more enticing. And I gotta say, man, like I love sci-fi, I love space. Fallout sci-fi was never something that really got me. Like you were saying, you're not that interested into it. So when I saw that they were making a space game, oh man, I lost it. And like it has turned out looking like everything that I wanted to see from it. It's a genuinely exciting looking game. But you say you're more multiplayer focused, so are you kind of looking at Starfield as like just sort of a temporary thing you're going to do, get through the missions, get through the story, and then get back to like normal stuff, or how are you going to approach it?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so one of the things about games like Tarkov, or if you play like competitive shooter games or competitive multiplayer games, they really reward people who spend a lot of time playing. They reward people who watch a lot of content about the game and get every single little edge. Like, there's this BattleBit game that just came out. It's like Roblox for Battlefield, and it is a blast. And I'm enjoying playing it, like not taking it seriously. And I caught myself going and watching these videos on like how to, separate vault from jump. So I can jump and vault at separate times and like grab corners and like peek around corners and get like a slight advantage, and all these little things that are like, like takes like 12 hours to practice before you get it right, and like all this stuff. And I caught myself doing that. I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I'm not playing this competitive. This is BattleBit, and I'm just having fun playing it. And I think I'm at a point in my life where, number one, I think making content is going to absorb more time than I can actually game. It's kind of funny. You become a gaming content creator and you can play games less than you could before.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you feel that.
Oh yeah, dude. I don't play video games anymore. Just if I play a video game, I'm live. I'm on a stream.
Yeah. And so you have to question, okay, now I only have so much time to play. And a game like Tarkov has no end. Like, you can play it 12, 14 hours a day, every single day, and make progression and get better and get an edge over your opponent. Every single hour you're getting slightly better. You're getting more done. They just released like this quest line because it's about to wipe, and it's like a 14-part quest line to like unlock like 2 rows of like inventory space in your stash. And like people are grinding that out and playing it like nonstop, get that little tiny little boost. And so I like what I've decided is, my expectations around gaming is different now. Like I have 2 10-year-olds that are twins, and they're starting to be able to play more advanced games. So I was playing League of Legends with them. I played BattleBit with them, of course, and we play Minecraft, and we do all these things. And rather than trying to be at the top league of competitive gaming, which I'm in my mid-30s, so I mean my reaction time with first-person shooters is only going to go down. Like, I'm going to be less competitive every day moving forward, So like a game like Starfield is wonderful because it's going to be immersive. It's going to have a lot of depth to it. And I don't feel like I need to go watch, 17 YouTube videos to understand like what to even do. And Tarkov will fulfill that, hardcore game itch that I want to scratch. And maybe there'll be another game that I'll pick up in the future. But I think it's going to be refreshing.
Same. I wouldn't say I'm in the same place in that conversation, but I am definitely of the mindset that like I just really want something simple, not simple. I'm not going to call Bethesda game simple, but something relaxing, something that I can just like sit back and sink into and get a lot of hours in without having to think too hard, or like you said, go and look up a bunch of stuff to know how to do it. And nobody else has made a space game like that in a long time. I mean, we got Outer Worlds a few years ago, but Mass Effect Andromeda. Great things about that. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's much smaller than something like Starfield, though. I mean, it's kind of like a hub-based sort of thing. So you look at that, you look at Mass Effect Andromeda, and then the rest of the list is gone. There's nothing else space-based that really does that. So I think they're fitting into that really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I think 10 years ago, this game would have not been, I mean, obviously if this game came out 10 years ago, that would have been incredible. But 10 years ago, like if I was 10 years younger today, I don't know if this game would be number 1 on my list of excitement this year. But I think where I am in my life, it's literally number 1. And what's so funny is it comes out, like the pre-release comes out on my birthday.
Oh, nice.
So like I already like negotiated with the wife. Listen, we have a newborn. You're taking all the responsibilities that day. It's my birthday. You're going to let me do this?
Did you also let Bethesda know? Like, hey, guys, I don't need to pre-order this, right? Can you just... It's my birthday.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome, though, man. That's a good birthday celebration.
I'm going to make sure. I think my noise gate is cutting me off and make sure this is not messing anything up.
Got you a little bit there a minute ago.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. I think I fixed it. All right. Yeah. So it's one of these things where it's just the right time, right place for me, and I think it's the right time for a space game. We've seen studios try to make quality games in this genre, and it's so difficult. It's just so hard, and I think the timing's just about right here. And I hope this opens up the floodgates for more. Yeah.
No kidding.
Like for more studios to do more in this space.
I mean, things are looking good, dude. We got like in the real-time strategy area, I don't know if you've heard of Falling Frontier, but it's a really, really good looking like tactical RTS that takes place in space. Homeworld 3 is looking good. And then these RPGs, you got Starfield coming, and the new Star Wars game is looking like an open world kind of space game for next year. And I'm thinking, man, if these pop off, yeah, I feel like this decade we could see more good space game stuff, sci-fi stuff, which is just something that they haven't been able to do. Like you said, they haven't had the tech, they haven't had the manpower, they haven't had the money really to do this stuff. Mass Effect was like the best example of this before, and they still had to do, land at this hub, use the map to get around, don't fly your ship. We're seeing it expand though, and I love to see that. I really hope that they do a good job with Starfield here.
So what do you think about not being able to like really pilot the spaceship like into the atmosphere and actually pick your exact landing? It's kind of a launch sequence and a loading zone. Like, what's your take on that?
That is, obviously it's a disappointment because I like the immersion of getting down to a planet like that, but at the same time, it's not why I'm looking at Starfield as a game. It's we were just talking about, this is a game you can sit back and relax in. I could just click a button and then be down on the ground ready to talk to the person that I'm going to go run a mission for, instead of going through the process of taking care of my spaceship. That's something I want to do at a different time of gameplay, So I appreciate that for the type of game it is, for the audience they're going for, they have made the sacrifices and made the changes that suited that game best. And I think that's a good call.
Yeah, and it's like different game for a different purpose. These guys, like, I just made a video about this big problem with this flight simulation game, and there's this game called DCS, which is a probably the biggest flight simulator in the military sim space. Ground to air and all that. And I was doing a bunch of research for this game, and I watched probably 30, 40 hours of streams, and I watched, a bunch of videos about the game. And the vast majority of the content is like incredible detail of how to like get the aircraft off the ground. I mean, some of these cockpits rather, you can manually select like which fuel tank you're pulling fuel from. You have to like do a warm-up procedure with the engine like you actually would with the real airplane.
Right.
You can overheat things and cause problems, like all this kind of stuff. And so these guys are going through this whole procedure, right? And some of these manuals are like hundreds of pages long in the game. The manual for the plane is like hundreds of pages long.
It's work.
And I'm like, whoa. So like, again, that doesn't mean like, I don't want to, so, and then there's games like War Thunder, right? Where it's like, because you don't have to do that in War Thunder, does that make War Thunder a bad game? It's like, no, they're trying to do different things. And Star Citizen is the flight simulator in this genre. They're going way deep into everything, and that's why people love it. But Starfield doesn't have to do that to be successful and be fun.
Exactly. I mean, if it did that, it would probably be less successful, right? They're trying to get people on consoles. They're trying to get Timmy getting his first Xbox at 13, just looking for a game to hang out in. Like, I feel like those things would kind of alienate some of those players. And I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted now thinking about DCS. I know quite a few people who cover that game and play it. There's excitement in chat as you mention it. That is, for me, the pinnacle of simulators. I don't know any simulator very well that goes to that level, and I would never want Star Citizen to be all the way at that level. But you have a good point, man. It depends on what you want, and that's why you shouldn't want Starfield to take a feature from Star Citizen. You shouldn't want Star Citizen to take a feature from Starfield, because it might not be made for what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean, and the Todd father, I mean, he's trying to get paid here, I mean, he's got to spread this out to a bigger audience,
Dude, this has got to be funding his retirement, right? Like, he has been doing this for a long time. It's got to be at least funding, I don't know. I would say it's got to be funding his studio, because that's usually what they do. They make games, they do all this stuff, and then they go create their own studio. But he's already directing at Bethesda. So what is his next step after this?
Yeah, it's got to be okay. So the Microsoft acquisition, or the deal that they struck with Xbox to do the exclusivity and all that. That's such a big deal, because this is like everything is so much pressure is on this right now.
Oh yeah,
it's almost like almost get a little anxious. You know, like I don't have any like whether this game fails or not. It's just going to be whether I play it or not, or whether I have as much fun, whether I play it for 10 hours or 1,000 hours, right? But like from Todd's perspective, this is this is a big deal,
dude. Yeah, I mean, it's like a big deal for a lot too, for like space games in general. This is proving grounds for Bethesda, for Microsoft. It's like this. It's funny because a lot of the conversation goes to the console war stuff, right? Oh, it's not exclusive on PlayStation. Like, yeah, we get our own game, but like, guys, do you not look deeper at how? If this fails, I don't know what happens to Xbox Studios.
I'm getting stressed like adjacent just being around this. Like, I think if you put a blood pressure monitor on me, you just start talking about Starfield, my like blood pressure just starts going up, you know?
It's an exciting launch for sure. I hope that they've done a good job at bug fixing. They keep talking about, oh, it's the most bug fixed game we've done. Like, guys, all right, well, let's see.
Is that because you found a lot because there were a ton and it's still bad? Or like, what does that mean?
Like, because we've been bug fixing for 2 years now and still not sure.
We found 2,000 bugs.
Yeah. Either way, though, an exciting game, a lot riding on that. That's going to be, a lot of, maybe I'll have you back on the podcast if you'd like to come talk about it after a couple months playing, because I'm going to have a lot of people's opinions on that game.
Yeah, I might have to join in from a remote location in an undisclosed area.
Down in a bunker.
Yeah, no, I would love to come back and talk about it. I made a video, like my video about Star Citizen and Starfield was a few months ago or more, and I don't think the news cycle was quite as ramped up about these two games. I actually changed the title of my video. So 3 months ago, I made a video about Star Citizen, and it wasn't really about Starfield, but I started doing more research about Starfield, and I just ended up talking a lot about it. And the video was kind of ADD, is all over the place. And then I retitled the video like a week or two ago to Star Citizen or Starfield in 2023, because I know that's like what everyone's talking about, even though the video is not necessarily exactly about that. And so again, I'm kind of setting people up for being disappointed with my conclusion, maybe. But yeah, so like Starfield, like it is ramping up. People are talking about it. I'm going to stream it day one, right when I wake up and install. And I'm either going to get a bunch of people going, see, he told you, or I'm going to get people going, oh, just wait. Something's going to go wrong.
Yeah. You'll get both, plenty of both, no matter what happens. But I think the video was really good at, like, the introduction, like you said, it might have gotten people, in the wrong idea of what they thought the video was. But I thought the introduction was very good in kind of building up the work it takes to build these games, making decisions based on like what you're actually trying to build. The point about how Todd kind of looked at the planets and went about it and was like, hey, this is hard. Maybe we shouldn't do this, and actually made that point. I think that's a good contrast to what happens with Star Citizen. I mean, Star Citizen has always been a game of, hey, can you guys do that? Yeah. At some point, yeah, we'll do that. And as much fun as that has made the development, also obviously it has bloated the game to be really difficult to make. So I think that was a good angle to take it. The hard part is seeing that, and then I think also doubling down, or not doubling down, but like acknowledging why it's also a good thing. So like when you look at Star Citizen's sort of like that approach with planets, or the depth they go to, like you said, it's kind of like the flight simulator of space games. Do you feel like they've gone too far?
It's like it's choose your own adventure, really. I think if I could go back in time and restructure my video and hammer one point in, it's just like, be aware of what you're trying to do and where you're going. It's kind of like, okay, I don't know if this is too soon, but we all know of a sub that kind of went down under the water and had a little oopsie poopsie. Yeah. And I feel like you should be allowed to go do that. It's your life, it's your body, it's your money, but let's like do it under let's not do it under false pretenses. So everyone should be aware of the level of what the expectation is and the likelihood of it happening. Like Go for a moonshot. Try to do something incredible. But before you take money and have people come on board, there should be a very clear like expectation that listen, we're trying to do something kind of crazy, and if we accomplish it, it's going to take a really long time. And I think the big problem with Star Citizen in my mind is it's clear to me, and I think most people will agree that they didn't realize how hard this was going to be, and their expectations of what the scope of the game were very different than where it is now. And I think some people love that, and it's clear that like there's fun. I mean, people are giving Star Citizen money, you know, they're buying the ships and they're backing this journey. Yeah. But I think there are some people really early on that are jaded because it's not where they thought it was going to go. And that's a tough thing. And I just think with these style of games, there should be kind of a clear expectation that this is, you know, this is a gamble, and it in a lot of ways. There's tech here that we're going to rely on, that we're going to create, that we haven't created yet, and it could be 6 months, it could be 6 years. You know, like creating these systems. You know,
yeah.
And you're seeing that with like the server tech, like with you know, the desync problems and netcode and all that kind of stuff. It's the same problem in Tarkov, by the way, but these are things that are like, you know, seemingly simple from a gamer perspective. Like, why can't you just fix it, throw money at it, get a better server? And then when you actually get into the weeds and you start looking at why these things are the way they are, you go, oh my God, this is a lot more complicated. This is a lot more difficult. No one solved this problem before. That's kind of rough, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's my overall kind of like feeling around Star Citizen. It's not like hate or malice or even frustration, really. It's more, man, like these problems are harder than I think most people realize, and they're going to take longer than most people realize. And I think it just needs to be there in the foreground that, you know, it might not work. And I think a lot of Star Citizen fans, they don't want to hear that. And it's, you know, I don't want to break the immersion or, you know, like ruin, like, you know, it could be, because it is kind of fun backing something and watching it evolve. And I've done that with Tarkov and other games, and I've been disappointed. And at some point, I don't know, it is okay to like release the reins a little bit and say, you know what, this is out of my hands, you know, and I don't have to defend this project, and I don't have to be like their spokesperson, you know?
Oh yeah. I think, I mean, I spend a lot of my time trying to tell people that like, this is, you should not, don't look at this game if if you're not ready for that. I think it's a good idea. It's a good take. You're getting into something that is experimental, and like people will be like, oh, it's the forever alpha, it's always an alpha, but like, it is a legitimate alpha. They are building the game engine. Things are happening that they don't know how they're going to react. And I think your best point you've made there is like, they don't do a great job of communicating to people that, hey, this is really hard stuff we're doing, and we kind of don't know when it's going to be finished. They try to give dates, and we've gone through so much drama of them not giving dates because they realize the dates suck and getting in trouble for not giving the dates. And now kind of we're at this stage where they are struggling to decide what information to give. And all throughout that time, there's never really been that disclaimer of like, they always say this is an alpha, but this, guys, we don't know exactly how this is going to turn out. And they kind of leave it up to the player to have that knowledge, to understand that like, this is experimental, might not end up working out the way we want it. And I don't think people are really, like you said, gamers we don't read. We don't read.
Yeah,
critical thought is like it's not second nature.
Yeah, you put this treasure in the background, in the foreground. You make me sign a document, like whatever. Let me just get right to it. Let me it's right over there. I just get out of my way. You know, I think in Tarkov we it still says like beta game every time you log in, and it makes you like accept that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a meme, because I kind of wish the whole gaming culture would get away from the alpha beta whole, like, you know, labeling, because it really doesn't apply to games like it used to. So you know, in my video I did talk about how we pay for games and how games are delivered has changed like rapidly in a very short amount of time. We went from there basically being no internet to everything being shipped to you, like an actual chip that has to get to you that can't be updated, to games that were downloaded over the internet that were updated in real time with patches, to now we have games that are like a living, breathing organism that's being changed in real time at all times. Like Star Citizen and Tarkov. These games are constantly being tweaked with. So like server-sided changes are happening without even patch notes or anything, and these games exist, as a constant flux, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like there are some labels for games like this, and I think that's great and all. And I think I wish that we would just get away from this alpha beta thing, because it's kind of meaningless. It's like is there some committee that gives you the alpha or beta status, and like you graduate to beta status, and it's like, I don't know. It just seems kind of arbitrary to me.
Well, do you think that like following the feature complete for alpha, or what is it? Feature complete for alpha, and then content complete for beta. You think that's realistic? If they stick to that, makes sense for them to call themselves what it is?
Again, Tarkov has been in beta since 2017, 2018, and they've added features like every year and removed things and stuff like that. Again, and no one's like really like, so like the definition of beta, right, should be you've completed everything and now we're fixing bugs and we're play testing and we're making adjustments to gameplay, right? Like, oh, the flags was in the middle on this map, but A side wins every single time. So let's move the flag further towards B, right? Like that's a beta change. But in Tarkov, they're still adding maps. They're still adding bosses and adding features and things like that, and they still call themselves beta. Now you can say, well, that's inappropriate. They should call themselves an alpha, or whatever. Right. But again, it's like no one really like. I don't think the gaming culture like what is the distinction? I mean, in the Star Citizen, viewpoint, it's an alpha. The core game is still being worked on, and so yeah, it classifies as an alpha or whatever. But I guess if I'm going to buy this game and play it, like, what does that mean to me, really? I should expect bugs. Well, I'm already playing a pre-release game, so I don't know. If you're going to release a game and make it playable to people, and you've already resigned yourself to this position where you have to keep the game fun and interesting and keep people entertained while you produce the game. And I think once you're in that stage, it's like, I don't really care what they call alpha or beta or whatever, right? Like as a consumer, it's not very helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, it's labels, and at the end of the day, it's a lot better to just get like a 10-minute summary of what's going on with the game than to look at a label to try and figure out your experience. But nobody wants to do that when there's a buy button.
Yeah. So when there's bills, you got people you have to pay.
Yeah. So let's talk about that sort of idea of, I guess, alpha and Star Citizen, how it's being built. Adding features is happening all the time, but feature creep is something people talk about, I think, a pretty decent amount when it comes to Star Citizen. Generally, my question, though, is like, when does it go from feature creep to completing the promises? Because what you'll hear is you'll have people that'll be like, okay, stop adding features and just finish the game. And you'll also have people who will be like, well, they need to complete all these promises. They need to give us what they told us they were going to give us. So like creating the features would be completing the promises, would be finishing the game. Where do you think there's like, why do you think people are still saying, oh, stop adding features if that's supposed to finish the game?
Yeah, I mean, this is highly contentious. In my opinion, if you're going to put a roadmap out there, right? If you're going to put a roadmap, which is essentially a list of features and, not necessarily a timeline, but an order of things at least. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not the end of the world if you have to change a few things. But the thing about Star Citizen is, when was the last time you checked out the initial Kickstarter scope? Like they haven't changed it since like 2013 or so. Like you can go there right now.
First Kickstarter page.
Yeah. And if you go on there, let me pull it up real quick.
Oh yeah, no, I probably see that at least once a month.
you know, and again, this may be old news and you guys are tired of hearing it, but you know, like this is Star Citizen is like almost the best example of a game that has added features that the community wants, but it's at the detriment of completing a game. Now, I realize that a game like Star Citizen and Tarkov and other games, they're never going to be complete, right? Like there's always going to be updates and an ongoing, correction of things and adding features and stuff like that. Like you could look at a game like League of Legends. How has League of Legends been relevant for so long? It's because it's constantly being evolved on. Now, League of Legends from a game scope, from an engine scope, is so much more simple, but still, like, you know, the whole idea of constantly evolving and changing the game. I don't think the gotcha is, you know, oh, you said it's complete, but you're still adding things and you're actually not complete. It is a moving goalpost always, right? Mm-hmm. But at some point, there's like a basic level of gameplay that I think we would all agree on is when the game kind of goes full release.
Yeah.
And it becomes impossible to do that when you are constantly adding new goals to meet. And if you look at the Kickstarter, they have this section called Real Quick, Star Citizen Is. And they talk about how it's about space adventure, trading, dog fighting, and all in the first person. And they say single player, offline or online, persistent universe, and they said moddable multiplayer hosted by you, and no pay to win. They have some other things in here. And they say that Star Citizen is not an MMO. It will have a persistent world, single player campaign, so they hadn't quite separated the Squadron 42 from the multiplayer. Again, and that's an example of reducing the scope, maybe, like actually separating it out. But you have all these goals, right? And if you go through this Kickstarter, which I don't have to bore everybody, it is very clear that their idea, I mean, they even mentioned 2 years, it is very clear that their idea of what the game was going to be is completely different than it is today. I mean, just look at their system requirements. A GTX 460, 4 gigs of system memory.
What, dude? 4 gigs? Yeah, that's all you need.
My wife got a Surface book for her work that has 8 gigs of memory, and I'm like, what? In 2023, you can't even have a Chrome, browser open and send an email with 8 gigs of RAM.
They even sell 4 gigs anymore.
I know, right? So, again, I'm not saying. I mean, Tarkov is the same way. They started off with an idea. Actually, they had a lot of ideas that they're never going to hit. They want to have a completely persistent overall universe where with map to map travel. That's with no loading zones, which is never going to happen. But so they've had to scale back too. But what I'm saying is that I think it's undeniable that adding features to this initial list of the Kickstarter list has delayed the development of the game. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily mean it is a bad thing, right? Like the fact that they're adding things like mining or salvage or something to the game, I think everybody's like, oh, that's awesome. But it wasn't in this initial thing. You won't find that in here. They said space adventure, trading, and dogfighting, right? Those are the big things that, in the real quick section. They don't mention the vast majority of things you can do in Star Citizen, right? So,
well, that's the thing. I'm looking at this list and I feel like they kind of do, but it's very generalized that that's where it starts to get confusing. So they have this part here where they're every spaceship is built from hundreds of subcomponents, many of them moving and articulating as they would in the real world. If a component gets damaged during combat, be prepared to feel the effects on your ship. So they could go and they could be okay, so we've now mentioned that we have subcomponents in all the ships and that they can get damaged. Well, you need a repair system so that you can fix them, and those components need to be moved, so you need tractor beams and interaction. And I feel like that's where they started to expand initially, and that they said they were going to do things like, a dynamic economy. Well, what exactly is in a dynamic economy? Or intelligent flight control system? Does that mean that it is countering gravity, or does it let you just kind of fall out of the sky when you slow down? Does that mean that's a feature they need to deliver? It gets weird when you look at the feature list because I agree with you. They've expanded from this part for sure. The Kickstarter was nothing like what we have now. But if you go to, say, 2017, 2018, when they were getting to that point of, I think, finally starting to understand what the game was going to be, it feels like they more just expanded on features than added them. Would you call that a different type of feature creep?
Yeah, and I think some of the features they added, post 2013. I mean, these are big features. Okay, these are
huge. I mean,
yeah, I mean, So, and again, like the devil's in the details. So you say, if you say there's gonna be a space game where you travel around and go on adventures, saying that there's gonna be no loading zones, that's not just like a small fine print thing. Oh yeah, and there's no like loading zones, by the way. Okay, like that's a big thing. Like no one does that. Like no one's done that. Like again, there are games like Eve and stuff like that, but it's not to the level. Like you can't. I mean, it's not anything like Star Citizen. So again, so what I will say is that I think I like what I think happened, and this is just me making stuff up, is they got over 2 million in funding off this Kickstarter in a relatively short period of time. They had a huge amount of support and funding, and they said, well, like, let's shoot for the moon here. Let's add some more things. Let's go, like, let's do more with what we have. And again, there's nothing immoral about that. If people are giving you money and you want to expand things, there's nothing wrong with that. But I can't help but look at this and go, well, this is adding complexity to the game, and this is adding, every time you add something, it's so hard to even like fathom all the effects that it has on the game.
Yeah,
something as simple as like even just changing some customization with some some ship or whatever, right? Like it now, think about all the errors and the code and the effects that just one little change has. And I can't imagine how complicated it is now every time they do updates.
Yeah.
And if they had known, and again, if they had known where they were going to be today, they would have taken a different path to get here.
I can
almost guarantee that,
The biggest example of that is when they decided to say, hey, we're, instead of just doing sort of what Starfield is doing, actually, where they were like, okay, you're going to get to a planet, click a button, cutscene plays, and you're in the city. They were like, okay, we're going to fully make these planets. You can fly to them. You could fly off of them. They are simulated, all this stuff. I think that was indicative of just how much expansion they wanted to do after they realized the support they were getting. They said, hey, we want to make a good space game. These people want to see a good space game. Let's hit the top that we can. And yeah, I think there's good and bad sides to that. You said it's like it's not amoral, or it's not immoral if these people are funding it, but it's a slippery slope, and we slipped. we slipped a bit. 10 years on now, I think a lot of that is because of the engine development, but a lot of it also is mistakes, I think, in this kind of process, and the sort of order they went about it. Like you were saying, they probably would have taken a different path. Who do you think are worse, investors or backers?
Yeah, you're going to make me look like a greedy, dirty capitalist here. I don't know why my noise gate's having me trouble today.
No problem.
I don't know. I think I understand your question, and I'll say that I'm going to sidestep that question and say I don't think it's a worse or better thing.
Okay.
And I think they serve different purposes. Okay. There are pros and cons to both. And I think one of the big advantages of being an investor is you are looking for a return. And a lot of gamers don't like that. They don't like the idea of a studio or, a company looking for a return, right? Because it's greedy. They're going to cut corners. They're going to try to push for a release early to get their money. Like if an investor was involved in Star Citizen, it would not be in production, I don't think, now.
Mm-hmm.
At this point. And we know this, we have some evidence of this because with the freelancer situation, Microsoft and, they came in and were like, we have to publish this thing next year. We're not going to, like, we can't keep developing this. We just got to go. Like, we're losing money, right?
Chris.
And So so ultimately, I think having somebody who has stake in the release, the successful release of the game is important. And you're looking for a return, the game has to come out. And one thing that investors typically like one difference is they usually own a larger share of the risk than a single backer. So look at like Rockstar, like they had, you know, a handful of investors, I think, to fund GTA, and it was a very expensive engine and game to release. GTA 5, I want to say it was like 350 or something $1 million. Like that's a huge chunk of change. You throw that kind of money down, like, yeah, you're going to be watching this and making sure you're going to be hiring people just to look at the plan and ask industry experts just to even see if it's possible, you know? And so you have some checks and balances. And I think without having big investors, now there are some investors in Star Citizen, but it's not the majority of the money, right? Like it's a small amount. They're almost like an insurance policy, a check and a balance to make sure this thing's on track and it's realistic. And yeah, are they going to cut features? Are they going to push back? Yes. And is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? That's like up to you as someone involved in this project. Do you want this to go on for another 20 years and add even more features and do things that no one's ever done? You don't want an investor shutting things down. If you're someone who's like, dude, I'm 65, I've been following this since my mid 50s, like I'm going to die before this game comes out. You're like, no, I want this thing to come out, you know? So
somebody
like everyone has a different
today on my stream.
Yeah. And there are some threads I found doing research on this where like some dude was like, you know, I played this game with my buddy, he got cancer and died. And I'm like, oh no. Like there are like people who like really want this game to come out and are going to miss it. Like it's not ever going to get to the point where they want, or they'll have kids and things will happen. Their life will get more busy and they won't have as much time, you know, as they do now. Yeah. And like your life changes, right? So now the difference is a backer doesn't profit share and they can't ask for their money back most of the time, especially if they played for any given time. Now CIG they have issued some refunds and there are games where you can get refunds here and there, but the vast majority of backers are not going to get their money back if they're not happy with the end result, whenever that is. That's part of the problem with being a backer. You're not involved in the decision making. You're not involved in any kind of choice, really. You can vote with your money and you can complain and you can make videos and write comments, but in the end, you don't have a lot of power. And one of the problems with being a backer is you're one of a huge amount of people who are funding this thing. And generally, you're giving a small amount of money. Yeah, there are these whales, like you've seen, $100,000, all this crazy stuff. But the average backer, less than $100 probably. Man. Yeah, dude, it's a lot of money to me, but apparently,
yeah, I mean, see, that's the thing is like for some people, that's like buying a single ship, you know, and it's just
But so backers, you know, they're not looking at a return on their investment. They want the game to come out and they want the game to be as feature rich as possible. So backers, you know, if I paid $100, let's say I bought like some package or something, I spent anywhere from $50 to $150. And a couple years goes by and they say, hey guys, like you guys are backers. We said we weren't going to, you know, we said we we're going to do loading zones. What do you think about having no loading zones? And you gave a poll to backers. I guarantee you like 99% of them would be like, yeah, no loading zones. Hell yeah. They'd all hit that button. If it was an investor, you know what they would say? How long is this going to take? Is this possible? Yeah. Who's done this? Who's working on this? Who's the engineer behind this? Like, do we have like what's the performance metric? Is this going to tank our whatever? Like, when, you know, all this money I gave you, like, when am I going to get that back? You're going to delay that another 2 or 3 years? Like, they're going to ask those kind of questions. And I think there needs to be like a balance of the two. And I've argued for the longest time that I think one of the healthiest things for the gaming community is to allow backers to fund a game through like Steam or one of the big, you know, game, you know, downloading services or whatever, and be able to withhold funds and release funds at certain dates. And when you feel like the project isn't going where you want it, or you're not liking it, you stop releasing the funds and you get like a partial refund. So say you give them $100, you know, a year goes by you've only released $20 to them. It's like $20 a year or something. And at some point you pull out or whatever. So that gives some power to the people. And then it also kind of puts a check and a balance on the game developer.
Man.
But I think that's the ultimate problem with backers. They just don't have any power. There's nothing that you can do.
Right. That's a good point. Because I'm sitting here thinking about, like, investors, they want their money, like you said. Backers want a better game. So you would think going with backers would build a better game, but there's also a lot of responsibility that comes in a project that we're not great at. Like you said, we see the button, we hit it. And that's what happened in 2014, I think it was, when they said, hey, we want to keep going with this funding and build something even bigger, or we could stop with what we have right now and just build what we can. And like, think something like 70 to 80% of people were like, yeah, keep going. And they kept going.
They pedal to the metal. but you look at games like BattleBit and Tarkov. One of their biggest expenses is server costs.
Right.
Is running the servers. So if they sell this game at whatever the price is, and they spend 5-10 years developing it, and they're paying for these servers, at some point you are costing them money by playing the game.
Right.
I can almost guarantee you that I probably like an EOD account, which is like your top tier account on Tarkov. It's like $150. I bet you I've used up more money than I paid in playing the game. I mean, I've been playing since 2017. I have like 10,000 hours or something. Like, I bet you I cost Tarkov money. Playing the game. And so there is a check and a balance in some games, because like at some point, like they can't continue, Yeah. And at some point you can't just be selling new games to new players. At some point it's going to dry up, and you're going to be in a situation where, you got to do something. But yeah.
Well, that's really big, and that's something that doesn't really get mentioned. People will be like, okay, it's $500 million raised. Like, where's the game? And a big part of that cost has gone towards, the engine development, which we can talk about, but also keeping the actual thing running. Like, when a game's being made, you're not really thinking of spending money on live servers, community managers, moderators, all this stuff to keep an actual live experience going. Do you think that that's been more of a detriment to the project, or a help that people have been playing this whole time?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's tough, because how do you get the funding? Like, no one, if you didn't allow people to play the game and give them something, I mean, people just aren't going to fund the game to the level that it is.
Right.
And for Star Citizen, with its current goals to be completed, you need the money. I mean, there's no way around it. I don't think the problem with Star Citizen, in my mind, isn't that they spent so much money. It's that they spent so much money and they still need to spend a lot of money, and it's a long road ahead still, in my opinion. And so that's rough, right? Like, and so they, to scale, to get things done in the way they want to get it done, they do need to have a lot of employees. They do need to have a lot of talent. They do need to have a lot, like, their payroll is expensive, and it needs to continue to be, that way. And so I don't know if there's a way that they could have pulled this off and gotten to where they are now if they went to investors. I just don't think it would have happened. So the big benefit of backers is the fact that you can do things like this. Escape from Tarkov, Nikita, the guy at Battlestate Games that makes the game, they had made a game called Contract Wars, and they had made a few games before, but they could not find anybody to invest in their game. And then there's a combination of, like, you can always find someone to invest, but like the deal is just so bad, Yeah. So it was better for them to go to throw some sweat equity in, to get a alpha out, and to ask for money and develop the game from there. And they obviously made the right choice. I mean, it's doing really well. And so I guess the question is, you don't have a crystal ball, and so it's easy for me to, in hindsight, say, hey, you should have done this or should have done that. But I don't think, I really don't think they would have found an investor to give them the kind of money that they needed like to get it done in the way that they want to get the game done. Had they asked somebody for money and wanted to, share equity or something like that.
Right.
I just don't think it would have happened.
Because then there's also the complication of, like I said, the game engine. They're building basically a new game engine for this. Do you think if this story had been viewed as the development of a game engine rather than the development of a game, people would have been more lenient about it? Because I feel like there's not as much knowledge or perceived knowledge behind what it would take to do that from the general community.
Yeah. Okay. So there are examples of game engines like Epic Games. They developed Unreal Engine, that have been something that are a household name now that a lot of games are using, and they're more third party now and all that. And then there are examples of game companies like Rockstar. We talk about GTA. They created their own game engine. Bethesda has their own. Valve has their own game engine. id has their own game engine. Ubisoft, Crytek, Bungie. They've all created their own game engine for a specific purpose, right? I think the thing that Star Citizen, the situation they're in is like there is no game engine to use, so they had to, right, to accomplish what they wanted, and so they had to. And so I guess the argument is if they were trying to develop a game engine, it would have marketable, economic, advantages in the marketplace if they wanted to design something like that. And I can see an investor totally getting behind creating a game engine that could do large scale universe simulation, in real time, and server meshing and all the things that are just so difficult, So I can see that being something, and I don't know why anyone would back a game engine, right? Like, because it's so early on. It would be like me investing in, like some
like a construction crane instead of the building,
without owning the rights to, actually use the crane for my own development or something, and without being an actual construction developer, right? So I just don't think. I mean, it's just it is a cost of doing business, and I think people want to buy a game. They want to buy into a game and play a game and all that. And, this comes with the territory, and it's just one more thing that people just don't realize, and Bethesda, they've updated this engine. The word on the street is it's getting old. It's getting archaic. Even with the new update that they updated for Starfield, it still kind of looks like a game from 2010, the actual graphics and like the processing power and everything. And again, that's not why you play Bethesda games, to push the limits, past, like what's humanly possible or whatever. But no, I don't think I don't think anybody would really care too much at all if there's not a game attached to the engine. I just don't think it would make headlines.
But if it was being developed, do you think people would say it's taken too long?
Unless if they're not backing the project, they wouldn't care.
Oh, well, tell that to my YouTube comments.
There's probably a ton of game engines and all kinds of things being developed right now that are failing. I mean, just think the vast majority of restaurants and companies in general just don't ever succeed past a year or two, right? So, again, the people who are frustrated with that are the investors who lost a bunch of money, who gave the bank who gave them a loan. They're the ones holding the bag at the end, right? So I think the issue is this was a dream sold to people that they paid money. Whether they think they got a good deal or not is neither here nor there. But in their mind, they paid money. They like for this idea, this game, and they want and they feel entitled to it. Where if an independent company creates a game engine and fails, it's like, okay, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you would want it to be, you're like, oh, that would be exciting, because like Unreal Engine 5, right? Like you've seen all the previews where they show the lighting.
Yeah.
I mean, like I was a photographer and video guy, and I'm seeing this and I'm like, I've been waiting for this. This is so incredible. Now, if they failed like this year and they couldn't pull it off, like the lighting, I'm going to be like annoyed, but it's kind of like, oh, well, maybe someone else, maybe they'll do it next year. Maybe someone else will do it. I don't think I would have as much of a visceral impact of like, you guys didn't do it. I believed in you,
Right. And you say that, actually, I was just thinking, like, there's a chance that they were working on this as long as something like the Star Citizen engine. Obviously, not one feature would take that long, but maybe they were working on whatever became Nanite from 2012, and they got to 2016, and they were like, this isn't working, we have to start over. It took another 5 years. We never get to see that kind of stuff, so there's so little context for us to actually look at this project or look at Tarkov or any of these projects and say whether or not they're behind or ahead or doing the right thing. That's why I like your approach, that really it's about understanding what you're getting into, not so much about judging whether or not the project's actually doing what they're doing. Because there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. I'm more libertarian minded. I'm more choose your own adventure minded. Like, you should be allowed, like, again, you should be allowed to make a sub and go down way down there with the Titanic and take a risk. But
just don't ask other people to come save you.
When the other person, when you invite somebody along on your journey, you should like have a sit down conversation with them. Be like, listen, buddy, like I think this is made pretty good, but like I'm not 100% sure this is going to work out. You should at least have that conversation.
All information should be on the Kickstarter page.
Yeah, and if again, I think there's nothing wrong with supporting a project and throwing some money at a game that's trying to do something really innovative. And I think the disconnect is the entitlement, right? Like, if you get into a sub and the guy tells you, listen, man, we've only run this thing like 10 times. We think this is pretty good, but like, we haven't got this thing certified or anything. There's no whatever. And you go down there and like water starts leaking in. You don't go, oh my God, like, we didn't see this coming. There's no way. I'm, like this experience is not fair, whatever. Like, you're like, oh shit, like this was a mistake, but you at least went into it knowing that, this is trial and error here. But I think that's why that story with the subwit was so big, is that we couldn't believe that anyone walked into that scenario and paid so much money. Honestly, and didn't realize.
Yeah, that's
know. And then you go and you look at the videos of the guy who's running the company, and he's like scoffing at safety practices and talking about how safe it is and all this kind of stuff, And I think that's the disconnect with Star Citizen is, and we kind of talked about this earlier, but Chris Roberts, I think, has not been very transparent with what is capable versus what he, is kind of, and again, over the years, they have backed away from doing roadmaps and giving hard dates and things like that, which I think is a smart move,
Yeah. They're terrible at dates.
Yeah. Just like, don't even do it. Like Tarkov's learned this too. They used to give all these dates and say, we're going to do this and all that. And I'm like, stop. Like, why even do it? You never hit them. And like, why even put that pressure on you? We don't even think you're going to do it. So why are you even
familiar, man?
Just don't even do it. Yeah. So like, they've, for the first time in a long time, they told us we're going to have a wipe in August and then another wipe like pretty shortly after, which they've never told us like far in advance about anything. Huh. And I thought that was so odd, because their whole thing is they don't announce wipes until like the day before sometimes.
Oh.
They'll do like pre-wipe events and kind of like give you like an idea, like, oh, we're getting close. But sometimes you'll get like a pre-wipe event and like a month will go by, like, so again, I think that's smart, just do your thing. And the other side of this too is like, developers need to be free to do their thing, to do what they want to do, to sometimes do things that the community doesn't understand and is not in agreement about. And when you have so many backers who have spent money with so many opinions, it gets to a point where it's like, so, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this, so many opinions, so many ideas. Everyone's the smartest one in the room. Everyone's got an idea, and it's just, it turns into this
of course I am.
What
do you mean, everyone? Come on, man. I'm here. I do agree with that. It kind of bums me out when we don't get certain information, but like at some point you need to just pick what's going to happen with the game and do it, instead of like we pride the idea of helping develop the game, giving feedback and all this stuff, but at some point The game's not going to be made unless they find their vision, stick to it, and see it out until we get to experience what they actually have planned. Because up until there, we'll be just complaining.
Yeah. I'm big on if you're gonna complain, it needs to be constructive and it needs to be something like that's actually like meaningful.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will complain about a game and just keep complaining and all that kind of stuff. So you either stop playing or keep playing, do do whatever. But it's not very helpful just to be a negative Nancy, and just just complain all day. Like everyone gets sick of that. And the people who do believe in the project and are supporting and want to march forward, like get out of their way, let people, I mean, and again, don't not have valid criticism. There needs to be valid criticism and there needs to be a watchdog effect from the backers, or else, no one's holding them accountable, right? The developers. But there's definitely a fine line there. And I found myself walking that line with Tarkov. And so I made a video about something that I felt really, really, really strongly about. And I thought the community was divided on the number of cheaters in the game. And I was like, let's find out. And, that was kind of my way of giving feedback. In that same token, I've realized after talking to, I had interviews with the Amazon anti-cheat lead developer who was Riot's anti-cheat developer. He got poached by Amazon about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had him on and we had like an hour and a half, 2 hour talk with him. And I've talked to a bunch of anti-cheat people at Vanguard and a bunch of other people. And I'm realizing, holy shit, this problem is complicated. And I realized, okay, this is what they have to do. Are they on that trajectory to complete this goal? They are. They've listed out some things that they need to do, like they need to completely restructure the netcode, which is going to take like a year or two.
Oh God, I've heard that.
And they're doing that. They actually are doing it. And they pretty much halted like development on most of the new features related to all that. And it's like, okay, well, I need to kind of shut up and let them do what they're going to do. I mean, I complained. It seems like they're doing what they need to do. Let's let them fail or succeed.
Yeah. That's how it's got to. That's kind of where we are with server meshing at Star Citizen, which I'm sure you've heard plenty about. I've got a question for you about playing games in early access. In your video, you talked about vertical slices. You actually made a whole kind of trailer for a fake game to prove a point. But in your video, you talked about the vertical slices, and one of the big points you made was how they can be faked. I gotta ask, if you had the chance to play every game out there when it was being made, let's say we could play Starfield for the last 6 years as it's being made, or like, I don't know, Elder Scrolls 6 right now, would you prefer that, or would you actively not want that kind of possibility?
This is such a hard question to answer. I think if you told me right now, would you prefer to have played Starfield for the last 2 years in early development before it's released, in less than a month now, I would be like, no.
Yeah, I think I'd say the same.
Yeah. And so I would say no. And but if you asked me 2 years ago, here's the vertical slice for Starfield, I would say yes. It's like human nature, right? I'd be like, I'd stay up till midnight to download, the thing and play it, the second it comes out. And so it's kind of like, it's like gambling or drugs or anything that's bad for you that you're not supposed to do. It's like, it's easy. It's easy to say like, no, I would never do that or whatever. And when someone puts it in front of you, it's hard, And so, I know that donuts are bad for me. So when I'm at the store or when I go to place orders, however everyone does it these days, I don't put it on my list very often because I know that once it's in my house, I'm going to eat the entire thing. So I know my boundaries. So with early access games, the rule that I've made now is like, I will not play an early access game unless I feel like the value is like 100% there at the time that I buy the game. And so a lot of games get eliminated when you look at it like that way. And so I've been following Star Citizen for a really long time. And I've been watching your content for a long time. I've been watching other people's content and watching streams. And I'm like really close to coming to check it out. And only just recently in the last couple of months did I do streams with it and I start playing the game, because it's never been at a point where I feel like I was ready to check it out. And probably if I hadn't made a video about it, I probably wasn't quite ready. But I think I think everyone should, that's a different answer for everyone. It doesn't mean that it's wrong or right. I just think you should go into it with that mindset of like, am I going to get my value right now? And the value to you could be watching a game in development, being part of the process. That's perfectly legitimate. But you just need to have that frame of reference before you go into the game.
Right.
I think that's just like it's just an important point, because it's very clear when you look at the comments and you look at feedback for CIG and other pre-alpha games and stuff like that. People didn't go into it with that mindset. It's very clear, or they went into it with the mindset of being like, I am really involved in the development and I'm going to be an asset to this game, and they're not listening to me, and I'm, giving this feedback and they're going in a direction I don't want them to go in. And it's like, it's my game, they had that kind of attitude.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would make me hate every game, man. I mean, we haven't gotten to the point where Star Citizen's released, so I don't actually have proof of how this will work. I don't play early access games generally, but I've been trying to think of like taking a game that's far out. I know is far out. Star Wars Eclipse, that's not coming out for at least half a decade. And I'm just trying to think, like, man, if they gave me access to see what they were doing with that game right now, how bad must it be? How horrible of an experience would that make me hate the game forever? Like, Star Citizen is something that they've been trying to actively make playable, so I guess that's a little bit different, and they would be doing the same with Star Wars Eclipse, but I just can't help but shake the feeling that, like, I don't want to know how a game is made. I love knowing how Star Citizen is made, but an average game is just, it gets you jaded. You see how much of the cool stuff they have to skip or delete or like redo, and I think we can kind of see that same disappointment coming from the way that they're marketing these games now, like Cyberpunk doing that mission, having to cancel some of the features that were in that mission because they just couldn't get them in time for the launch. And it's like, that's only a small version of what would happen if everybody could just play these games all throughout development.
And how many people in the Cyberpunk situation went back and did a full playthrough after a lot of the big fixes, and performance things and glitches? I don't think it was even probably 20 or 30, like 30% of people probably didn't even go back.
I'm just now starting mine. And I think releasing something like DLC is a big way to get people to do that. But look at this. It took like 2 years to get DLC out because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And would it have been better just to do it right the first time? I mean, it has to be so, and again, there's like this point in which every developer has to decide the release date is this moving object. Even if you have these features that are set in stone and you've met those features, we all know that there's more to it, right? And so every developer, every publisher rather, they have to decide when to pull the trigger and stop working on something. As a creative, this, like, you can sit there and edit a video forever. Like, you can literally edit it forever. At some point, you just have to say, okay, I've done, there's diminishing returns now, and that's a hard thing. And I think, there are greedy publishers and there's, a lot of bad decision making, I'm sure. But I think the vast majority of it is, not necessarily in competence, but just, hedging your bets and just being off, and it's narrow sometimes, it's like small little things.
Really is. All right. The concept or the vision of a game. A lot of times that doesn't vibe with the community, or might slightly shift from what the community wants, or even just a certain part of the community. When it comes to games in general, and I guess Star Citizen more specifically, how much would you say a company should compromise the vision they have for that game to maybe get it out in time for the players, like get it out in the next couple of years? Should they start stripping out core features, or do you think they should be sticking strong to what they want to complete and maybe what the community might not be super excited to see? What is your opinion on their priorities there?
It really depends on what kind of long-term career they want to have in the gaming space, maybe. No, but like I think, okay, I feel like this is almost a Tarkov question as well, because Tarkov, the lead developer of Nikita, has almost said, he's Russian, so it's a translation, you know, but he's almost said this game should not be fun. Like you should feel like you should feel pain. You should never feel like you've got everything figured out. And he has created a game where, you know, there's enough random chance things that can happen to you that can just make you feel like this is like a, you know, a torture simulator, you know? You go into a raid and you get a heavy bleed and you go to stop the bleed, and a sniper, you know, AI shoots you in the head from like 300 meters away, and you're like, okay, all right. So in his mind, he wants the game to be just punishing. So he added like random chances for like every iteration to the game. He's made it more frustrating in some ways. He added like gun jams. So you have a gun, you bring it in brand new, you shoot it a little bit, like it starts overheating, the barrel starts overheating, and it has a chance of like jamming right in the middle of a fight. And you might just die because you're gun jammed. And that's Tarkov. And like people talk about getting Tarkov, you know, like sometimes you just die. It's not your fault. What game on the planet does the developer go in saying you're sometimes going to lose and it's not your fault and get over it? Like, and he's stayed true to that, like till today. And if anything, he's doubled down on it. And he even has said recently, I think this game is hard and tough now. It's only going to get more difficult. So he's made more difficult changes, right?
He hates his players.
Seriously. I mean, like it is a meme in Tarkov. And anyone who's played the game will tell you this, you know? So that's an example of like, it would be easy to push towards more of a Call of Duty play style or make the game more rewarding for the average player. And he's decided to go, no, this is going to be like from a design aesthetic, from a gameplay perspective, this game is going to be punishing. And Star Citizen has aspects to it as well, where, you know, they're not going to, you know, change. And no, we're not going to allow you to, you know, just keep respawning your ship over and over and over again because you crashed it taking off because you didn't know what you were doing. You know, no, it blew up. You're going to have to wait for it to come back in insurance. It's going to cost you money. You know, you're going to have to wait, you know, whatever the period is that changes, you know. But there are certain things that Star Citizen, you know, is not going to do. No, you don't get to instantly get teleported to the thing. You got to ride the elevator. You need to take the train over to the other city. We're not going to make it so easy on you. Like you're going to feel like you're in a world, you know, and that's an unwavering decision that, you know, they've made, right? Mm-hmm. And so from a design aesthetic, from a gameplay perspective, the developer needs to be their game. They need to, you know, the buck needs to stop with them and they need to be in full control or else it's not their game, you know? Now, when it comes to like, should you waver on, you know, features to get the game out? Yeah. I mean, like, you know, we're in reality, right? Like, I've watched Tarkov drop features. Like they had this idea of having like custom body armor where the body armor has hitboxes within it. So like you might be shot underneath your arm and someone can one tap you with a certain round. But if they shoot you right here in the front, it's not going to go through, right?
Oh my
gosh. Right now, if you're wearing body armor, if you get hit like in the side of the arm, it'll go through the arm and then into the body, and there's calculations and stuff. But it'll treat the chest like one hitbox, kind of. Yeah. Now you still have like face, ears, nape, and all this stuff around your head, and helmets, you know, only cover certain things. But from the chest perspective, so they had this idea of like we want to create custom body armor rigs so that you can in your hideout like actually design your rig the way you want it and have pockets in the right orientation, so that you can carry different types of mags. Like say I want like bigger magazines, like extended mags for like a shotgun. They take up a lot more space than, you know, a pistol mag, you know, for example. So you could design a rig for that. And that's amazing. And I want that to enter the game, but it's looking like that's unrealistic. Like it's not going to happen. And I'm okay with the developer going, we had all these ideas and it's just not going to happen. Maybe a future update or something, but I think both things need to be true. The developer needs to be one in control. It needs to be their game. They need to design the game in the way that they want to design the game. And I think the community needs to be open to the fact that not everything's going to happen. And that's okay. And you don't want the developer in a situation where they are blowing a huge amount of their budget and extending the release by a significant amount of time because they ran into a problem that it's unsolvable. But the community says, you said you're going to do it, so you have to do it. I think that's ridiculous, but I might be in the minority there.
No, I think that's I agree with you there. There's definitely like a diminishing returns, I guess you could say, on the size of the feature, right? Like if this had to, like I had it written down in the notes, if they were saying, oh, we're just not going to do the economy, it's taking too long. Like, I think everybody would be like, no, you should definitely do that. And so I always kind of wonder, like, because people, like we said earlier in the conversation, they'll say, hey, stop adding features and just finish the game. Like, which features? Which ones are they? And that's kind of different for everybody, because you could tell somebody, yeah, we'll cut base building. And they're like, that's all I cared about. You can tell somebody else, yeah, we're getting rid of ship engineering. But for some people, that's the major part of the game. So it's always an interesting conversation to figure out what are the things that applies to, and what are the things that maybe can easily go.
Yeah, I mean, this goes. I think one of the big challenges with Star Citizen is the amount of gameplay loops they're trying to allow to happen in concert. So they're trying to create a universe where there are 5, 6, 7, 8 gameplay loops that you could play independently. You could be a trader. You could be a PvPer. You can be not really a bad PvPer. You could be a PvPer that runs protection on transports.
Yeah, bounty hunter.
You could be a miner. Yeah, you could be a bounty hunter. Like you can literally like do like arena stuff and like race, or whatever, right? So there's all these gameplay loops that are fulfilling or whatever. And the problem with that is you've sold almost like a bunch of different games to people.
Yeah.
Where with Tarkov, it's like, yeah, there's all these features, but ultimately the core game is done. Like the gameplay loop, I mean, again, you can't really win. You can't beat the game right now. But the core game and how it's going to be played is, for the most part, done. They're putting the finishing touches on things, which is a different situation. And so, if I, personally, what appeals to me about space games, like an online space game, would be PvP. I think boarding other people's ships and going after people, having like clans or guilds or something that are taking control of an area of resources, securing an area for a trader, like stuff like that would really appeal to me. I like the dynamic. I like dealing with human beings. I like taking other people's stuff, and I like the pressure of losing everything, in a fight or something, right? Like that to me would have me coming back to the game over and over and over. And if they announced that we're just going to drop that, and because of the server stability, we're going to make it like a typical MMO where you just like click orders of things and it executes for you, and it's like a chess match, and you're like, oh no, like that would kill it for me, right? And so I so I can see where that's coming from. I think the mistake there is announcing features and getting really far into development. We're talking years, and then cutting them. I think that's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
You need, like, once you've announced a feature and you've been working on it for a long period of time, and you've released like development updates and you've talked about it and people have backed the project because, this is the game that you sold it to them. I think you do run into a problem. And that's a problem that I don't have to solve, fortunately.
Yeah, not one that you want to. Geez. And there's also like sometimes they won't drop the feature. They'll just kind of put it away because they know they can't work on it. And if you don't say anything about it, people are going to assume you dropped it. And that causes a whole nother problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's the idea of dropping features, putting features down, which features define when the game releases. Man, there's like, it's so subjective, I think, that the conversation surrounding how a game should be released. But I guess I want to wrap things up here because I've taken plenty of your time. What are your thoughts overall on Star Citizen? I mean, as somebody who has followed it for a while, it sounds like probably it's not quite at that place where you're ready to play it. Maybe you're waiting for something particular. Maybe you just have plenty more on your plate right now. I know you're quite busy. What are your thoughts overall on it long term?
Yeah, I despite me being critical and having my opinions and things, I want this game to succeed like no other. I want this game to do amazing. When I made my Wiggle video, the Wiggle deck that killed Tarkov, I never mentioned the actual developers by name in the video. I never said it's their fault or whatever. I was frustrated with a specific problem that I wanted solved, and I think the problem to me was people didn't even think it was a problem or as big of a problem as it was. And I think with Star Citizen is they've got a lot of problems they got to solve, right? But I want them to solve it. I want them to get the funding to continue the development. This is an amazing project, an amazing undertaking that they're like working on. And what happens with Star Citizen is going to affect future game development, how things are funded, the success of even just space games in general in this genre. And it has a lot of impacts. And there are a lot of people who have put so much time and energy into this project over so many years. And I hope it gets to the point where it's in a state that I can hop in and start really enjoying it. I think when it gets to a point where the servers are running better, and in real time we have pretty a low amount of desync, that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be a point in which I'm going to really like when the server meshing and the servers get really dialed in. That's going to be a really awesome time to come back into the game, and that's kind of like one of the bigger hangups. Also, the AI. I think when the AI gets worked on to it, to a point where it's really compelling and fun. I mean, the AI in Tarkov is also, it's got its problems.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, they're smart, but too smart and too perfect. But almost randomly so.
Yeah.
So it's feel like you're playing against you're having to cheese the AI to beat them. You're not having to outsmart them like a human being.
Okay, gotcha.
And they don't make mistakes like human beings. They make mistakes like a computer that's programmed to make mistakes. And that's, I mean, you walk up to a door and you do this slow right-hand peek to see through a tiny crack because the AI can't detect you through a crack, And so the game developers see that all the AI is being destroyed by players, so they crank the accuracy up and they crank the the damage up and they crank the HP of the bosses up because they're like, look, our stats they're beating them. But the new player that walks in and treats it like a real fight gets completely decimated. They just walk up, boom, just die instantly, And so you don't want to be in a situation like that, right? But the AI in general, I would say that, and the server stability stuff, I think is number one, because getting the 30Ks and all that kind of stuff, and it's just such a killer, man. And when they get that under control, man, and Tarkov had the same problem, dude. You used to get kicked out all the time. You get disconnected from raid. You'd spend 15 minutes trying to connect. It was terrible. I would have never recommended playing the game back then to anybody, but I believe in the mission of Star Citizen. It's the kind of game that I want to play. It's deep. It's got so many aspects to it. And I want more games like it. And and so I kind of can't wait. I kind of wish I could go in a little time warp, and
yeah, dude. So
see what's going to happen, but we can't,
I feel like I come out of the time warp and they'd be like, okay, get back in. A couple more years, get back into the time warp.
Yeah, you're like, so, you're about to slow it down a little. Message like, not yet. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So for you, the gameplay and the direction that they've kind of gone with it, it's there. It's just more the game needs to be able to run as it's supposed to for you to get good enjoyment out of it.
Yeah. I think the performance and even just fulfilling what they like, the current scope of the game. If it was rock solid, man, I mean, I think I would be playing it now.
Yep.
Would you? And so, yeah.
Would you say, because we kind of started the show with this, I guess after we talked about Tarkov, we started by talking about where Starfield sits on your ranking. And you mentioned that you're not super into single player games. So I was wondering, is Star Citizen on your ranking higher than Starfield?
I would say in the grand scheme of things, yes. But this year,
well, yeah, I mean,
no, but like, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, if Star Citizen pulls off what they're trying to do, it's going to be number one in its category, like hands down. There's almost no way it can't. And that's the question, right? That's the $1 million question, or the $1 billion question.
Yeah, very expensive question. Oh man, long, expensive question. All right, man. Well, do you have any questions for me? Final thoughts you wanted to leave?
Yeah. Okay. So if you, 2 questions. Number 1, what's the current gameplay loop of a PvP guy? And what do you think the loop for a PvP player would be in the future that you think would be like the ideal release, in its final form? If you had to make the case to me, like, hey, like this is where it's at now, but this is where it's going. This is, I think you'd enjoy this.
Honestly, I think the best, and I'm showing my bias here, I think the best PvP profession in the game is going to be bounty hunting, because you're getting both the ship side of PvP, the FPS side of PvP. You're getting the ability to track people through, like, logging into air traffic control, checking out the local comms station, asking the bartender about stuff. You are doing restraining. You're actually interacting with other players. You have to restrain them, put them in a body pod, take them back to the office where you're turning them in, and get paid for the bounty. So, like, you have a lot of options when it comes to bounty hunting, as opposed to, say, I don't know, a PMC, a mercenary might be just flying in a dropship to a bunker, going in, taking out some people, getting some loot, and then leaving. I think that there's a lot more variety in bounty hunting. As of right now, though, it would still be bounty hunting, I guess, because most people who are doing PvP are doing it in ships. It's not super focused in FPS unless you're in the Arena Commander standalone mode. So a lot of times, if you're doing PvP, you're going out, and the easiest way to do it is just go bait people in chat. Tell them you're looking for a fight, challenge somebody, and you'll get to do some fights. But the current problem with PvP, and this could be a problem long term, is that, like you said, you're not just respawning after you die. You're getting killed, and then you have to go back to the station, get all your stuff back, get your ship, wait for it to spawn, get back out into the black, and then you're flying around, and it's a hefty amount of work for possibly getting shot and killed in 30 seconds. So PvP is an interesting one. I think they will have to depend a lot more on players getting downed than dying for that to be realistic in the game long term. But I do think, bounty hunting is going to be a good play to go.
Yeah, like I almost feel like this is, theory crafting, and I don't want to run on with this, but in my mind, there's got to be some incentive to disable a vehicle and capture somebody.
Yeah.
And there has to be consequences for completely destroying the vehicle. Like if you're a bounty hunter, like let's just look at United States, like current, contemporary. If you're a bounty hunter, you don't shoot a bazooka at somebody's vehicle, right?
I don't know.
Like,
you might be out of the job pretty quick.
Yeah. I mean, you don't do that, right? You wait for them to get out and you ambush them, when they're walking into a store, or you sit outside their house, and when they go to get in their car, you pull up behind them in front of them and you box them in and you get them out of the vehicle, right? Like, and then if you do a bunch of damage to their house or their vehicle, like you're probably like on the hook for that, right? And if you're a bad rogue person or something, or a criminal in society, you are not opposed to doing damage to things, but you also realize like it's just my charges are adding up. Like I'm never going to get out of the green. So like when a police officer goes to pull you over, there's this idea of, and of course bounty hunters aren't police officers, but like similar kind of process. When a police officer pulls you over and you want to get away, you don't necessarily want to blow the cop car up. You want to get away, right? So the whole cat and mouse game would be interesting if there was an incentive to capture just person and their ship, and the person in the ship trying to get away is incentivized to fight the bounty hunter off without causing damage to a space station or whatever, right? Like, so I think that could be really interesting and intriguing and a lot of fun, and again, difficult to pull off.
Definitely. I think it'll come down a lot to the law system. It's a couple things. I think ships are becoming more valuable. This year they added soft death. You can disable ships without blowing them up. Some of these ships have physical components that sell for a lot of money, so you can either take those components or sell the location to somebody, and the law system just needs to get a lot harsher for people who are killing. They need to implant in our brains that attacking people is one thing, killing people is just astronomically different. And I don't know how they do that, but that's part of their challenge with like you said, incentivizing people not to just be murder hobos all the time.
Yeah, because I think getting into, when you watch Star Wars, when you watch Star Trek, when you watch like sci-fi movies, the great movies, every once in a while you'll blow up a ship and that's like beating the bad guy. But they almost always encourage some situation where you're boarding the ship or landing in the area that they landed in, and you're looking for them, in the city, you're looking for them on their ship, you're, whatever, right? And so I think that ultimately we're almost creating another game, but I think that to me would be an amazing gameplay loop, being involved and things just working, right? Like if the server was running really, really well and there wasn't a lot of desync and, your shots landed where they land and the person is where they're at, that to me is really cool. And then incentivizing PvP in a way where, in Star Citizen, you can, warp, from your ship anywhere. If you wanted to create a system that was a little more PvP, you would have set areas where, like maybe there's like a huge teleport, portal or something. This is getting out of the lore of Star Citizen, but you would encourage areas where you can't just warp away. This is like a high value loot area. There's lots of mining and these areas move and people are going to travel there, and it's going to be a fight every time you go there because there's resources or some reason to be there, some task or something, right? And you create environments that are more dynamic,
Yeah.
They're not contrived. You're not saying, hey, let's meet out here and let's fight. Let's actually like, there's a resource here. Do I let you mine it? Do I let you have space? Do I mess with you when you have your back turned? All this kind of stuff just adds dynamics to it,
Right.
And I think more of that would be amazing. Yeah.
We need that. Incentives to do stuff. Central locations of population. There's no like, oh yeah, there's a nice mining drop on this moon that everybody's going to. They do that sometimes though. I'm sure you've heard of Jumptown. It kind of activates as a drug dispensary that it makes a lot of money for you if you can hold it down. So what you'll see is you'll get like massive groups of people coming in and trying to take it over. You get people sneaking in to try and do that stuff. And as they build out more of those in the game, I think we might see more of that. But then comes the whole you can't jump away thing, interdicting people, kind of snaring their ships. It's sort of a player component. You can do it now.
Yeah.
But expanding on that, I think would be really good for that kind of gameplay. You're right.
Yeah, and Tarkov has a similar thing where you have areas of the map that are high value loot areas. If you go there, it's going to be a fight. On average, this is a locked door. It's very expensive to open up. If someone opened the door and it's early in the rain, like, okay, this is going to be a fight. I'm risking a lot to make a lot, and I could turn around and go a different way. So having designated areas where it's like, and WoW has dealt with this, having PvP zones and friendly zones and things and stuff, but I think having more of that kind of loop would be amazing. And even bounty hunting where you don't necessarily even have to have a mission or a goal per se, but the gameplay loop can be done in different areas and things like that. You can tell somebody to leave an area and they don't leave, and so you ensnare them and you disable them or whatever, and you mine and then you leave, so you're not causing a lot of damage. Like just even like gameplay loops where you can play it the way that you want to play it.
Yeah, sandbox.
Yeah, totally.
That's what we're looking for. And you had another question?
Baby, staying up brain, sleep deprived brain. It's not coming to me now.
No problem, man. No problem.
I'll have to get you next time then.
Yeah, dude, this was a great talk. I appreciate you joining me for this. I think a lot of people are going to get good stuff out of this. Honestly, this show is generally people who are in the Star Citizen community, so it's great to hear from somebody who's kind of seen it, knows about it, but maybe isn't obsessed. So thank you for hanging out with me for a couple hours here. And if you have no other questions, please let the folks know where they can find your content and go check out some more of your videos.
Yeah, so I'm primarily on YouTube. That's where you're going to find the majority of my stuff. g0at or Goat Moth. I am doing a lot of. I just recently. This will be kind of news. I was sued by a scammy game company, and we basically got them to drop the lawsuit recently. So I haven't even announced that yet. So
nice.
If you want to catch up with that, it's an entertaining thing. If you were into DC, if you're into flight simulation stuff, the Star Citizen group might like that. I think I have a video about the scammy guy creating a game, trying to scam the military out of money. And so I had a bunch of co-founders leak the information to me, and the guy didn't like it. So he tried suing me. I had a lawyer, and we got them to drop the lawsuit. So I'm going to be announcing that soon. It's all public. You can go on the website and and see what's going on in real time because it's public knowledge. But so stay tuned about that. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun video series. I feel like you're kind of hitting that. Let's see. I mean, there's a few channels that do good videos about this kind of stuff in gaming, and definitely more space for it because I think, especially the one you did about Tarkov, and also this one sounds really interesting. I think that's going to be fun to watch, guys. That will be down in the show notes, the links to all that stuff. So make sure to check that out. But thanks again,
thanks so much for having me on, man. This was a blast.
It was a good talk. Starfield and Star Citizen. The next year is gonna be very interesting. I look forward to hearing what you have to say about Starfield. Thanks again for joining me.
And we'll have to have a chat after Starfield crashes or we'll have to see.
All right, you said crashes and I was thinking bugs, but you crashed at launch.
Same. Yeah. It's a meta,
yeah. All right, man. Well, I'll catch you later, and thank you everybody for listening. If you didn't get to catch this on the audio platforms, we have no ads there. Check them out. It's all the normal ones, Spotify, Apple, the stuff. Please go give it a listen. If you watch this on YouTube, though, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think. Compliment us on our pretty faces and our wonderful microphones, and have a great day. I'll see you all next week.